Um, Let me take a minute to introduce the any piece against pawn kind of endgame, because there are four interesting endgames there. There's bishop versus pawn, knight versus pawn, rook versus pawn, or queen versus pawn. Those four endgames are interesting, and they all have some things to know. We already did one session on the most complicated one, in my opinion, which is rook versus pawn. We had that, and yeah, you can find on my YouTube channel that video. I think it was a good session, and that's the difficult one. So now we need to cover the other three, and today I'm going to cover two of them. I'm going to cover bishop versus pawn and knight versus pawn. But you know what? Bishop versus pawn doesn't even deserve a title. So the title of the stream is knight versus pawn, because that's actually the only interesting one, because bishop versus pawn, it's absolutely trivial endgame, and we will spend maybe 1 minute on it. Just for context, and even if it's obvious, let's remind you that it's impossible to checkmate with just a bishop, and it's impossible to checkmate with just a knight. Sometimes you can do it if your opponent cooperates, and if your opponent has a pawn, for example, they can self-mate, but we're not gonna go there today. In general, the idea, if you have a piece that is a bishop or a knight, and your opponent has a pawn, the idea is whether you can draw or not. You don't aim to win. That's different when you have a rook and a queen. In that case, it's very easy to make a draw, because the rook and the queen are usually very fast, so they can very easily be sacrificed for the pawn. But of course, they also can checkmate, rook and queen, so they're trying to win. So there are different kinds of endgames in that sense. When you have the queen versus a pawn, or the rook versus a pawn, you're trying to win, and sometimes you can't. And when you have a bishop versus a pawn, or a knight versus a pawn, you're trying to draw, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't stop the pawn. So we're gonna see how to stop the pawn today, because we're going to see bishop and knight. And again, there's some rare scenarios where your opponent self-mate. We're not gonna go there today. We're going to just see how to make a draw if you have a bishop against a pawn, or more interestingly, if you have a knight versus a pawn. Hello, Frag. I don't know if I pronounce your nickname correctly, but I'm gonna call you Frag from now on. All right. So part one of this session. Don't blink. It's gonna take just 1 minute or two. It's bishop versus pawn. When you have a bishop, you know, the bishop is a fast piece. It's not like the knight. The knight is clumsy. But the bishop can very fast go from one side of the board to the other. Like, super fast piece. It's almost like a queen. So 99% of the times, it's just a draw, because the bishop can get to a certain diagonal and control any of the squares, like either the square of the pawn, or most importantly, any of the squares the pawn can go through. So even in a terrible position like this one, this is a draw. Our bishop is horrible on a corner, our king is completely out of the way, and black's really close to promoting. But even here, we're fast enough. We just need to control what square. Well, you look at the squares in front of the pawn, the one that's the color of your bishop. So our target is b1. So in this position, there's only one move that is true. Our position is really bad, but it's gonna be enough to draw. And the move, obviously, is this is obvious for you guys, right? I mean, the bishop needs to control b1 in 2 moves, and starting in a corner, we don't have access to e4 thanks to this king. So even that is bad. And even then, we can very simply go here and to a2. So after the pawn pushes, otherwise we take it. Bishop goes here, and it's a draw. I mean, we still, black still will try something, but if they attack our bishop, the bishop will go here, and this is a draw. We always will have, and to be honest, this feels like a very short diagonal. So next move, what I would probably play is bishop to b1 and then control from a very long diagonal, so we have no problem whatsoever. If those videos are like playlists with each video have 10 minutes, yeah, no, they're definitely going to be on a playlist. They are already on a playlist. But yeah, 10 minutes is not enough. Definitely yes for the bishop, but not for the rest. Okay, so bishop, there's no mystery to bishop versus pawn. There's nothing to study. There's maybe just one thing to know about bishop versus pawn, and it's this situation. The bishop on a very short diagonal. This is like the worst case scenario for the bishop, is a bishop on g8, and by g8 I mean on the square of a knight, like g8 b8, or for white side g1 or b1, and then and only then this is winning. King g7. Bam. This is like the only scenario where you can lose having a bishop. With your bishop, already controlling a square in front of the pawn, but because you don't have more, there's no more diagonal, you have to get out of there and lose. So yeah, probably, if last move, let's say, of black was bishop to g8, that was probably a blunder, and black should have gone bishop on a long diagonal instead. You know what I mean? So this is maybe the only position to know. There are many compositions of maybe several pawns and bishop kind of position that end in something like this, and it's actually very nice to win like this, king g7, and you win. But yeah, this is a winning position. It's one of the very few occasions where the pawn can beat the bishop. Of course, that happens only in situations where the bishop can't control any of the squares in front of the pawn, and in this case, even if that's the case, we can push it away. It's the only scenario. Okay, that's all. End of bishop versus pawn. This is all you know. All you have to know about